Hello all, my name is Fran Mako, and I welcome you to our presentation today, Key Timing, Planning for Driver Retirement in Connecticut. I'm sure most of you have seen that wonderful film with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, Sleepless in Seattle, that takes place in two major cities, Seattle and New York City, which both have accessible public transportation systems. But there are many cities, like here in Connecticut, where the car is still the preferred mode of transportation, and public transportation is not an accessible or convenient option. The baby boomer generation is the fastest growing demographic in this country, and unfortunately, many are outliving their ability to drive safely. Some may encounter situations where they can no longer keep their keys because of physical issues. Others simply can't afford their own set of wheels or live in the suburbs where public transportation isn't accessible. So what do folks do? How do they get to work or visit their friends or go to appointments when they become carless in Connecticut? Today, we're going to discuss options and resources for folks who still have people to see and places to go, but lack transportation or mobility to get there. With us today are two experts. The first is my Rhode Island colleague, Diana Gugliotta, or if you're a purist, Gugliotta. You'll talk about a new online program. She'll talk about a new online program called Key Timing to help folks prepare for driving retirement. Couldn't resist, Diana. Also with us is Meg Hafner, the Southwestern Connecticut Regional Mobility Manager of the Kennedy Center. The center is a Trumbull, Connecticut-based disability services and support organization that provides travel resources for various groups, including veterans, persons with disability, and of course, seniors. Meg will highlight options for older adults who no longer drive or can't afford personal vehicles to maintain their mobility. I invite viewers to submit questions to our two experts through the chat function in this program, and we'll try to answer as many as we can in our half-hour time frame. So let's begin with Diana. Diana, I know you're very passionate about this subject, this topic. Tell me the reason why Key Timing evolved and what you hope to accomplish with it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fran. Yeah, this was kind of a baby for us project at AAA. And I'm really proud of this project that we all worked on in the Public Affairs Department because it was very much member driven. And, you mentioned the baby boomer generation. You can see on the screens here, certainly we're in the midst of this. But in Connecticut specifically, in just 4 short years, so by 2025, older adults will comprise at least 20% of the population in almost every town in Connecticut. So it's so important to focus on this. It just makes sense to focus on services and policies that serve older adults. And absolutely, when we started Key Timing, it was because a member had reached out to us and said, I'm a professional negotiator. I just went through this really difficult conversation with my aunt. She was well into her 90s, and she unfortunately had to give up driving. And she said, I work in courts, in the state courts. I work with large companies and help negotiate deals. And this was one of the toughest conversations I ever had to have. And we spoke to the fact that every family has to deal with this. We were also at that time getting a good amount of emails and phone calls just from caregivers and family members, and we still continue to get these phone calls saying, AAA, what do I do? How do I get the keys away from dad? How what's the next step? And I think it's always really important to focus on data. So if we can go to the next slide, this is just one example of information that we include in this Key Timing program. This kind of highlights the 5 most common crash scenarios for older adults. And these are taken from police reports. The data comes from NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. But we thought it was really important to start here to have really, thoughtful, respectful conversations and teach our members and caregivers how to approach this. So, we know independence, like you said, it's so critical. It's so important to plan for mobility, but the conversation has to start somewhere. And, a lot of people will call and say, Dad isn't safe to drive anymore. And we try to get to the bottom of why they have that opinion, because it's unfair just to say, oh, someone's 80 years old or 85 years old and they shouldn't be on the road anymore. We have some excellent drivers. I mean, seniors often will be the best about self-regulation. You'll meet people and they'll say, yeah, I don't drive at night anymore. It's getting harder to see at night, or I don't want to deal with the highway traffic, so I'm taking a more rural route to get where I want to be. So they often self-regulate. But it's important, I think, to get the concerned family member actually in the car with that individual, or let's say, let's take a drive downtown. I'm going to follow you and see how you do. So we want to be obviously equipped with information. And you can see here, with those 5 most common crash scenarios, it's important that you understand that cognition and reflexes and vision are certainly going to change over time. But when you broach the conversation, one issue that shouldn't be missed is also medications. So we start with these 5 crash scenarios, and if we go to the next slide, there's another resource that I just want to point out that's mentioned in Key Timing. And you can actually access this resource right directly through this website, roadwiserx.com as well. So this is a great tool. You can put in any prescription or over-the-counter medication for yourself or, for that person you're concerned about, and it generates a confidential report, just kind of overviewing what implications there may be for driving on this medication. You almost have all the same information that a pharmacist would have at your fingertips. So very important to the conversation to look at, maybe there's something going on with a medication that could be easily resolved. And we can go to the next slide. Also important just to note, the one thing that's missing from that database, that RoadwiseRx database, is marijuana. And more we are seeing that prescribed for medicinal use. That's important to have a conversation around that specific drug as well. But I think you're in a really good place if you can, kind of overview what's in that database. So one of the strongest recommendations that we have for families and caregivers who are concerned about the safety of an older driver is to plan for a professional driving evaluation. And these evaluations are performed by licensed occupational therapists who will evaluate vision, perception, cognitive abilities, and then they'll actually spend some time in driving simulation to measure speed of reflexes, cognitive processing. And at the end of that evaluation, recommendations will be made about whether the individual is fit to drive or whether or not they might require some physical therapy, or get the recommendation to cease driving altogether. Obviously, private medical evaluations are protected under HIPAA laws. So we all, we often recommend this as kind of a first step. The results are not reported to the DMV in this case, but they are intended to be taken seriously. And I should also note that if a physician or law enforcement representative mandates an evaluation, in those circumstances, the outcomes of the evaluation would be shared with the DMV, but it is different. You have protection if you do this privately. And in Connecticut, there are private evaluation services offered in Simsbury, Norwalk, Meriden, and Watertown, and those are listed in our Senior Mobility Planning Toolkit, which I'll get to in just a second. But I think that's an important first step for families that have real serious concerns about their driver safety. So we can go to the next slide. And this slide sort of overviews the contents of the Key Timing online workshop. It's funny because, when I'm out there in the communities, as are you, Fran, when we make presentations, sometimes we'll hear from people that they're getting a little upset that their kids are becoming overly protective of them, or maybe suggesting driving retirement. And I always say it's kind of a side effect of being a really good parent. You know, and I always say, you know, if your children are this concerned about you, you must have modeled some really good behaviors and cared a lot about them when they were teen drivers, just learning to drive. And this is kind of the circle of life. So yes, your family members are going to get concerned if you're lucky enough to live to an older age. And it's, you know, it's kind of set up as an online module because often these caregivers are raising their own families, they're working, they're managing so many different things in their lives. We first started this as a program that we offered in person, kind of hoping to be the intermediary between the older adult and their child. So we could get blamed, but it works much better as it exists now as an online resource. You can jump on at 9 o'clock at night, you finished your day or early in the morning. And so it's set up with these modules in mind that you see here on your screen. But again, it's these great caregivers, these really wonderful families that are utilizing this. And we're hoping that we can spread the word enough where advocates and you know, social service providers that work with older adults can utilize this resource as well. So yes, it's structured in modules, and there's also, if you go to the website, which is right here at the bottom of the screen, AAA.com/key timing, up in the top right corner, there's a link where it says Senior Mobility Toolkit. And we can go to the next slide. I just love to show what that toolkit looks like. It's downloadable, so you can click on it, download it, and kind of fill in all the blanks. This is accompanied by another great resource on the site that highlights community transportation. And that's where you can go in by your own city and town and find out, you know, does that municipality offer transportation services, or do you have to look outside the community? We often see older adults that are very comfortable using the transportation system within their own town. But for those caregivers that have a lot of concerns, I think one of the best things you can do is, you know, sit with them, do the research, find out, you know, is there a paratransit service that they meet eligibility for? Do the homework in terms of, you know, what transportation services can accommodate, you know, just your simple running around town errands, what are the hours of operation, like I said, the eligibility for those programs. And this is where the rubber meets the road, quite literally. We want to utilize this toolkit as the guide for that driving retirement. You know, as Americans, we're so good at planning. We're so good at planning, you know, we have insurance and retirement funds and all this great stuff, but nobody really focuses on driving retirement. And, you know, you don't want to leave that individual stranded if that time comes where there are medical issues. So this is all about doing the homework and being proactive and finding great services like Meg offers. So I will let Meg take it away and explain all the wonderful work that she does.
Thank you, Diana. You know, I want you to know I do talk about key timing in my driver improvement classes all the time. And even though you mentioned that the program is targeted to adult children of older drivers, I have been told by folks in the class, many older drivers themselves have told me that they've used the program and they have benefited from it enormously because of the amount of resources there. It could be overwhelming. And from my own personal situation about 20 years ago, it was overwhelming. Which now brings us to the Kennedy Center, whose senior mobility programs are I like to say, one of Connecticut's best kept secrets. Meg, I'm embarrassed to say I never realized how much is available to seniors who are carless. And in your printed publication, you say your theme is connecting you to the community one trip at a time. Very apropos, and I want you to tell us about your offerings and how folks can go about seeking them out.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and my presentation. Hope you can see that. You see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So again, thanks so much, Fran. Diana, that is great information. Unfortunately, we don't always hear everything about everyone, so this is a great opportunity. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Meg Hafner. I'm the Southwest Connecticut Mobility Manager for the Kennedy Center, and I am going to talk about some of the transportation alternatives in Connecticut. If you don't want to do that homework, contact me. I'll do that homework for you. There's a lot I'm going to share with you in this short amount of time, so probably the most significant information you can take away is my contact information, and I'll give you that at the end. So some of the reasons, kind of as Fran and Diana mentioned, for persons not being able to drive, or there's certain times that they can't drive. If they're unable to drive at night or in rainy or snowy weather conditions, if they have a temporary or permanent disability, if they rely on family and friends to take them and they're unavailable, or if they do drive but their vehicle needs repair, this might be a time where you need alternative transportation options. A little background about the Kennedy Center. Yeah, we're located in Trumbull. We have great programs for persons with disabilities run for and by those members. And my department is mobility services, a little bit different, but we do share some similar ideas. A little information about mobility in Connecticut. There are 5 mobility regions. Each region has 1 mobility manager. The Kennedy Center manages 3 of those 5 mobility regions, but the 5 mobility managers are in constant contact with one another. So if you contact me for Southwest information, but you also want to know about Northwest, South Central, North Central, Eastern, I can connect you. In Connecticut, there are 16 transit districts. So as a mobility manager, I need to know about the ones in my region, but I also need to know about those other transportation options. A little terminology. So when we talk about taking the bus, we often think about a bus that looks like this. The longer buses, there's a schedule. You go to the bus stop, you get on the bus, you sit or you stand, and that bus runs all day long one route. Those buses are specifically called fixed route buses. The cost to take that bus is about $1.75 for 90 minutes. There is an option available through the Connecticut Department of Transportation. It's called the Reduced Fare Transit Photo ID. And this is available to seniors or persons with disability. And that brings your fare down to 85 cents. What if you can't take that fixed route bus? And by can't take, what I mean is if you can't safely walk to the bus stop, if you can't safely stand for the duration of your trip, whether it's 10, 20, 30, maybe 60 minutes on the bus, there's an option called paratransit, as was mentioned before. These are, you might have seen these smaller buses the transit districts provide. So this is still public transportation, again, available to persons who cannot safely take fixed route. These run 3/4 of a mile off the fixed bus route, so it is important to know the information about those bus routes. The fare is $3.50 one way. How do you apply there? You go to ctada.com. You'll see this is their home page. This is where the application is. So as you can see, you can do it online, or you can also print it out and mail it in. The number at the top of the screen, this is Mary Rosenbauer. Her title is Connecticut ADA Transit Coordinator. She is also an employee of the Kennedy Center. She's my colleague. So she's great. Her job is to know the ADA laws, the Americans with Disabilities Act laws, and how they apply to transportation throughout Connecticut. I often tell people you can go online, you can look at the application, get Mary to help walk you through it. She's just a wealth of knowledge. I confer with her all the time. A lot of people think you can only take paratransit to go to medical appointments, but you can use it to go anywhere. If you want to visit with friends, family, go to the salon, go shopping, you can take it anywhere. It is a scheduled shared ride. You do have to call to schedule the ride at least the day before. And again, like public transportation, you will be sharing it. It's door to door. So if you do need the bus driver to come and meet you at your front door and assist you getting on the bus, and at the end of when you reach your destination, to help you to that front door as well, they can do that. If you need help beyond that, if you need help getting ready, or if you need help inside the building where you're going, grocery store, doctor's appointment, you can bring someone with you. They're referred to as a personal care attendant or a PCA, and that person rides at no cost. Some other options. So again, like I said, there's so much information. I'm just going to give you an overview of what might be available in your location, but you're going to contact me and I'm going to connect you with your mobility manager if it's not Southwest Connecticut. Some ambulance services, of course, if we call 911, an ambulance might show up. They also provide non-emergency transportation. In Trumbull, we have something called American Chair Car Services. So again, wheelchair accessible vehicles for non-emergency transportation. An agency like the American Cancer Society or the ALS Association might provide transportation to treatments. Because of COVID, there have been some modifications to services, so you can call the agencies directly, or again, you can call your mobility manager and they can find out that information for you. Go Grandparent. So this is kind of an offshoot of Uber or Lyft. When we schedule rides with Uber or Lyft, we're typically thinking about getting on the internet, whether we use our computer or our smartphone, and scheduling our ride through there. Go Grandparent says you go ahead and use your landline or your flip phone and you can contact and schedule using those devices. And VEO provides transportation for persons using Husky insurance. There is a statewide taxi service, so anyone in Connecticut can use M7's taxi services. They used to be called Metro Taxi. As you can see, they have wheelchair accessible vehicles. They have a couple of programs that I do want to mention that are available. So they're both programs are mentioned on their website, m7ride.com. The first program is called New Freedom Fund Taxi Voucher Program. You do have to do that CT-ADA application, as I mentioned. Once you're deemed eligible, you contact M7, you get into their New Freedom Fund program, and you can get a 50% discount from the normal cab rate. So if your trip is beginning or ending in one of these towns that you see that are the different colors, you can use that taxi voucher program. But like I said, anyone in Connecticut can use the taxi itself. They also offer the Encompass program, again, available through m7ride.com for more information. This is for persons who are 60 years or older or have a disability, and there's a discounted rate there as well. If you live in one of the towns listed here, you're eligible for Encompass. They are expanding, both programs are expanding as the need for services expands. The Kennedy Center also offers a travel training program. This again is a statewide program. It's been in existence since 1991. We've graduated over 5,000 people ages 16 and up, seniors, persons with disabilities who are looking to learn how to use the bus or the train systems. It's your choice of where you want to go. They do one route at a time. There's no cost for this training. You only pay the bus or the train fare. We also have in each region either a website or a guidebook. This is my guidebook for Southwest Connecticut. So it has information on the transit districts, the types of transportation, the Americans with Disabilities Act information, senior centers, veterans programs, and it has a listing of the Southwest Connecticut towns. So we go town by town. So for example, for Fairfield, you'll see the information here. It's the town, the transportation provider, what is the agency, the service provided, the service area, what towns do they serve. It also tells you if the vehicle is wheelchair accessible, if there's any cost to ride, the trip type, are they only taking riders to the grocery store or only to medical, or will they go anywhere? Any eligibility requirements, and if the application, specifically the CT-ADA application, is required. In Northwestern Connecticut, available through the Western Connecticut Area Agency on Aging's website, you'll find a list of all the towns seen here and the transit options there. And in South Central Connecticut, their website is knowhowtogo.scct.org. And you'll see this great map. And when you click on any of these towns, you'll find the information and links to their services. This is probably, again, the most important information from my presentation. This is our brochure. So we have information, contact information from Mary Rosenbauer, the CT ADA Transit Coordinator. You'll see information there in the middle about our travel training program. And these are the 3 mobility managers that I mentioned for Northwest, Southwest, and South Central Connecticut. So again, here is my contact information. Meg Hafner with the Kennedy Center. Please contact me through email or phone. I will have much more information for you. Thank you.
Great. You know, it's so true that knowledge is power. You know, when I had my own personal situation with my in-laws about 20 years ago, you're only as good as the person who's helping you out, and they were in a variety of rehab centers, and the folks on staff never mentioned the availability of these programs. So I had my son on my hip and on one end, and I'm pushing my in-laws in a wheelchair on the other. It was tough. So this is very, very good information we can share. I do have a question for each of you folks. What would each of you say is the biggest challenge of getting an older driver to face their driving retirement? I've found, again, from my own personal situation, my in-laws were in denial. They just did not want to accept that they needed to prepare for their driving retirement. What would you say is the biggest challenge to convince folks like this? Diana,
Do you want to go first? All right.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it is the idea that they can lose their independence. When I think of a driver, I think of someone who at any time can go where they want to go. You know, maybe they're the driver for their friends and family. And if that ends, that is a tough, you know, milestone in life. So if they don't have information on, you know, what else is out there? How else can I get out? It is very difficult to say, okay, you know, I'm not going to be driving anymore, and maybe having to convey that to other people. So keeping people as independent as possible is a huge goal of the Kennedy Center's Mobility Services Department.
Okay, great. How about you, Diana?
You know, I recall hearing a presenter from one of the Boston hospitals that performs driver evaluations speak at a conference years ago, and she described something she called the ice cream test, which was, you know, picture, you know, a perfect 10, beautiful summer day, and you want to go out and get that ice cream cone. And if you don't have a car sitting in the driveway, how would you get there? And to Meg's point, it's that independence of being able to get up and go, you know, at a moment's notice. And one of the presentations that I know you've been doing as well, Fran, that we offer now at AAA is Uber Easy to Get a Lift. And we often find that people that we're presenting the information to love the GoGo grandparent service because they don't have to worry about the app. They can just call and, you know, dispatch a vehicle, and it's at your beck and call. So I think we're getting there with the technology that we have today. We're in a much better place. I know there's peer pressure, and I think that's probably the biggest challenge. And Meg alluded to this too. With my own grandparents, my grandmother hated to drive, so she would make my grandfather do all the driving and also be the chauffeur for all her friends when they moved down to Florida doing the snowbird thing. So, you know, him giving up his license meant they were all stuck at home. So there's a lot of peer pressure to keep that driver that others are depending on going. So like you said, knowledge is power, and having this information that they don't have to give up a lifestyle is really paramount. And
That's true.
We're all working so hard to get this information out.
Okay,
I think it's also a comfort to the caregivers. GoGo Grandparent offers a link to the caregivers to their own devices so they can see when their loved one is being picked up and dropped off. So I think that's important as well, the caregiver's comfort level.
Right.
Okay. I'm just checking to see if there are any questions from our audience. I don't think I see anything. But anyway, that's all right. This presentation is being recorded, so people can usually come up with questions after they go back and review it. So we are at the end of our allotted time. So I'd like to leave folks with one takeaway from this presentation. And I say this in my DIP classes, and that is to continually self-assess and self-regulate your driving abilities, to make a plan, because someday you too may be carless in Connecticut. So I'd like to thank my two guests today, my man behind the curtain, Alec, who's producing this event, and of course, all you folks in attendance. So this is Fran Mako signing off from AAA. Be well, be safe, my friends. I will see you on the road.
Thank you.